All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle a massive question today, one that sits right at the heart of politics and economics all over the world. What is the real price of progress? We're often told there's this big trade off between how a country is run and how much it grows. And it all really boils down to this one question, which researchers at the VDEM Institute put so perfectly. Do we have to choose between freedom and bread? I mean, really think about that. Is it a choice between your democratic rights and your economic well being? This isn't just theory. This question shapes global policy and, honestly, the lives of billions. And we've got to remember, for so many people around the globe, this is not some debate you have in a classroom. It's their day-to-day reality. The choice between having a political voice and just being able to put food on the table, that is a real lived experience. So let's explore that argument for authoritarianism. The idea that maybe sacrificing some freedom for super fast growth is a bet worth taking. We're calling this section the dictator's gamble because, as we're about to see from the data, it is a massive gamble. You've probably heard this a million times, right? People point to countries like China and their incredible development and say, see, authoritarian countries just have an edge. They can make big decisions fast, push through huge projects, no opposition. But is that what the evidence actually says when you look at the whole picture? Well, here's a really powerful counterargument from the VDEM Institute. They say that democracy acts like an economic safety net, and this is such a crucial idea. It's not about promising you the most spectacular, off-the-charts growth. It's about preventing the most catastrophic, devastating failures. And this chart here just lays it all out. Look at that first bar. Democracies, they tend to deliver pretty stable, predictable growth. It's solid. But then you look at autocracies, and wow, the results are all over the place. That second super tall bar, those are the success stories you always hear about. But that third bar, the one that goes down, that's the other side of the gamble. The many, many autocracies that end in just devastating economic collapse. So the key here is the huge variation. Choosing autocracy isn't a sure path to riches. It's a high-stakes bet, or you could just as easily lose everything. So to kind of wrap up these findings, the real economic advantage of a democracy is its stability. You get that predictable growth, and you're way less likely to fall off a cliff. And here's something really interesting the research shows. Even if you take a country with weak institutions, bringing in democracy doesn't hurt its long-term development. The whole idea that you have to build a strong state first under a dictator, well, the evidence just doesn't back it up. Okay, so now that we get the economic gamble, let's break down what we're actually talking about. What is an autocracy? What does it really look like under the hood? So at its absolute core, a dictatorship is a system where power is not accountable to the people. It's all concentrated with one leader or a tiny group. And they stay in control by doing two things: keeping a really tight grip on their inner circle of powerful elites, generals, party bosses, and by crushing any and all opposition. But here's the thing. Not all dictatorships are created equal. They generally come in one of three main flavors. First, you've got military rule, where it's a junta of top brass in charge. Then there's one-party rule, where one political party controls literally everything. And finally, you have personalist rule, where the entire system is built around the personality and whims of one single person. And it's fascinating, because the popularity of these types has actually shifted over the decades. The 60s and 70s, that was the golden age of the military coup. The Cold War, of course, was all about that huge conflict between democracies and one-party communist states. But lately, since the Cold War ended, we've seen a pretty big rise in those personalist dictatorships, where one leader basically tries to make the entire country their own personal property. Which brings us right up to today, because the tools that dictators use to stay in control have gone through this absolutely radical transformation. We are now living in the age of the digital strongman. Make no mistake, the old methods of brute force and secret police, they're still around. But the 21st century dictator has a brand new, way more sophisticated playbook. And it's powered by technology that the strongmen of the past could only have dreamed of. And this is that toolkit. We are talking about AI-powered surveillance that can track citizens on a scale that is just mind-boggling. We're talking widespread censorship and firewalls to control what people see and read. State-sponsored troll farms pumping out disinformation to confuse everybody. The ability to just flip a switch and shut down the internet to stop a protest. And even things like social credit systems that tie your everyday behavior to rewards and punishments. So here's the really crucial point. This isn't some faraway problem that's just happening in other countries. The very same tools and tactics, mass surveillance, disinformation, data harvesting, they're being used in democracies too. And they're chipping away at our privacy, fueling division, and putting our own democratic norms at serious risk. This quote from the Geneva Center for Security Policy just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the fight we're in. Democracy, to work, needs a shared reality. It needs facts and informed debate. Autocracy, on the other hand, it thrives on chaos, conspiracy theories, and lies, where people just don't know who or what to trust anymore. And technology is now the main battlefield for this struggle. But, and this is a big but, despite all these powerful new tools, these regimes are not invincible. They have weaknesses baked right into their systems. So for this last section, let's look at why and how dictatorships eventually fall. So, the end for an autocracy can come in a lot of different forms. On the one hand, you have the violent ends, a military coup from inside the system, a popular revolution bubbling up from the streets, or a full-blown civil war. But it's not always violent. The end can also come through negotiations, through pressure from other countries, or even through a slow, gradual opening up of the system. There's no single path out. And that leaves us with one final and I think really urgent question. In this new age of digital control, what are the new fault lines? What makes a modern government, any government, fragile? And maybe more importantly, what makes one resilient? The age-old struggle between control and freedom is being completely redefined right now, and finding the answer to that question, well, that's the great challenge of our time.